So last week on this show, I told you all about Steven Crowder's latest YouTube suspension. The reason he was suspended was for hate speech targeting transgender people. It was for a previous episode of his show. I believe it was a September 30th episode of his live stream show, which was titled, by the way, Special Guest Alex Jones on Great Reset and Joe Rogan Triggers Leftists Again. But within that show, there was a segment he did about a transgender woman who was in a women's prison as part of a law passed in California, SB 132, which allows transgender people to request that they be placed in a facility consistent with their gender identity when they're incarcerated. And according to Steven Crowder, a woman in one of these jails in California, because of this law, a transgender woman, raped and impregnated a fellow inmate. His source was a anti-trans TERF group called the Women's Liberation Front. And I looked into this story, and I found out that it wasn't true. And I went even further the day after I talked about it on this show, and I published a piece in Mashable where I spoke to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, who told me there are pregnant inmates in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation custody, but they were pregnant when they were admitted to state prison. And when I asked them, I asked to reiterate about the law. And they told me no one became pregnant while incarcerated as a result of the implementation of SB 132. And the reason this was important to me is because Steven Crowder's framing of his suspension, while YouTube says it was due to hate speech against transgender people, and during it he made a lot of derogatory comments about trans women, his defense was he was just covering a real story. Now, obviously, I discovered that that's not true. And I reached out to Crowder and asked for a comment from him or his people. Never heard back. A few days later, I find out he's going on Megyn Kelly's show to talk about it. They were talking more broadly about his covering of transgender stories in general, and he's been covering the issue of trans people having rights quite extensively. And he did end up, I believe, uncovering some stories where transgender people did seem to have commit some crimes of some sort. I haven't looked into everything he's covered on trans people, but yes, transgender people are in fact human beings like you or I, and there are trans people who commit crimes and do bad things, and there are trans people who don't, just like there are cis men and cis women who commit crimes and do bad things, and cis men and cis women who don't. I mean, I don't know what's so hard for them these anti-trans right-wingers to understand about this. But they did eventually get to the story that I covered, and let's see what Megyn Kelly and Steven Crowder had to say about it. Let's go to that clip now. And let me get to the part of the clip where they talk about it. 1 second here. Here we go.
Go out there to try to talk about the Loudon incident, and you go out there and we can talk about the particulars of the prison situation, but it is absolutely a problem right now that trans women just have to say, biological men just have to say they're trans women, and they can be transferred right into an all-women's prison, and female prisoners have repeatedly expressed their concern over their safety.
Why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? The only reason that's a problem is if you are under the assumption or belief that trans women are going to, without question, rape, sexually assault in some way their fellow inmates in this women's prison. Do you believe that do you share the same concern for men in men's prisons or women in women's prisons, cis women in women's prisons? I mean, assaults and rape happen in there. Why aren't we putting everyone in their own facility to make sure this doesn't happen, period? I mean, there are stories of prison guards, male prison guards, raping women in women's prisons. Or male and female prison guards having sex with men in men's prisons. Are there, whether it be rape or whether it be actual consensual sex, which, by the way, wouldn't really necessarily be consensual because prison guards can't legally do that with another prisoner. With a prisoner, period, I should say. Bizarre framing there already from Megyn Kelly, but really not unexpected, I guess. Let's continue.
I mean, look, I remember being dragged by my ear down to the dean's office because I didn't have the right hall pass, okay? If I knew that I had a get-out-of-jail-free card wandering my high school halls by tossing on a skirt and saying, you want to lift it up and check the genitalia? I think I have a right to be in the ladies' restroom. The point is, this policy is so absurd that the boy who claims to be bisexual and wearing a skirt, no one called him on it anyway. Like, hey, son, you wouldn't happen to be one of those transgenders, are you? You can't ask questions. I'm wearing a skirt. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You're free to rape. We're that far on down the trail. And look,
all right, so Steven Crowder is talking about one of the other stories he brought up. I'm not too familiar with that case because it wasn't the subject of my report. From looking at it, it appears that there is a case where allegedly a transgender student assaulted a classmate in the bathroom. I'm not sure with all the specifics. Don't know if it's true or not. But that's what he's talking about to give you some background.
We talked about how Me Too, and of course, look, people like Weinstein, of course, okay, I understand these people shouldn't see the light of day again. I'm also surprised that former President Bill Clinton hasn't been made the poster boy for sexual assault, but I digress. We used to say, well, we were silencing women, right, at the power of white men. Now we're silencing rape victims at the cost of the feelings of transgender individuals. This is not an isolated incident, and I'm certainly not, let me be really clear, I've never said that all transgenders are rapists. I've never implied that all transgenders are rapists because I don't believe that all transgenders are rapists, despite what YouTube want people to believe. Simply saying that a law like this, and certainly policies that are this murky, allow predators to take advantage in what are meant to be women-only spaces. But when you say, they are women-only spaces. Well, I meant women-only spaces. What do you mean by women-only spaces? Well, I meant no penises. I meant no penis spaces.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so let me get this straight. If now, if a transgender woman is put in one of these prisons and they've transitioned, meaning they've had the surgery to basically have a body that Steven Crowder would classify as a female body. Would he be cool with trans women in prison, in women's prisons? I would like to know that, actually, because I would highly doubt it, actually, based on what we know about Steven Crowder. But why is that an issue? Because we know, based on statistics, I believe there the governmental body that tracks this estimates that 200,000 sexual assaults happen per year in prison. And I can tell you right now that in California, there's a total of just over 1,000 transgender prisoners, and only 21 of them have been transferred to a women's prison. So I'm doing the math, and California has this law that makes them different than other states. So there's not many states that allow transgender women to be placed in women's prisons. But let's just say, 50 states. And let's just, really, really give him the benefit of the doubt and say that there's 21 women, trans women, in each 50 states in women's prisons. That's just over 1,000 trans women in women's prisons. So if every single one of them were the type of person Steven Crowder thinks they are, that still means that 198,000 and 950 no, that's even more. I'm sorry, excuse me. 199,950 sexual assaults are happening in prisons that literally cannot happen because there's not enough trans people in the prison system to commit them. So where is this outrage over the 199,000 sexual assaults happening in prison? Interestingly, Crowder doesn't care about the men raping men in men's prisons or the women raping women in women's prisons. The idea like that you need a transgender person for this to happen, for it to be a trans person needs to be part of this equation for this to happen is absurd. Let's continue.
So here's the thing, two points on this. We looked it up to find out, because most of the reporting links back to this WOLF, it's WOLF, which is an acronym, stands for Women's Liberation Front, it's a feminist organization that's been reporting on this. And so,
all right, they're a feminist organization that hates trans rights and literally I've looked into them for my reporting. They have teamed up with the Heritage Foundation and Focus on the Family, literally to stop gender identity legislation and trans rights legislation. If you go to their website, the Women's Liberation Front, literally every single issue on their website is an anti-trans issues. The idea that they're a feminist organization exists because they're just a group of women. They do not fight for any sort of feminist issues. They are explicitly an anti-trans group.
As we can tell, they claim that a female inmate in a California women's prison became pregnant after biological males, trans women, were housed in the prison. We have not been able to confirm that.
Oh, really? You haven't been able to confirm that? The idea that she looked into it, though, I don't believe for a second that she did, or any other conservative outlet looked into this before I did. In fact, I've seen outlets like The Blaze and Washington Examiner cover Steven Crowder's YouTube suspension and regurgitate his telling of events. I saw Tim Pool do the same thing. Steven Crowder suspended for telling the news. None of them looked into whether the story he was peddling was factual or not. None of them reached out to anyone who would be involved in knowing whether this was true or not. Crowder even said himself in his segment that his source was the Women Liberation Front. All you had to do was look them up to find they are not a trustworthy source, and you need to find someone with some connection to a specific prisoner or the prison system to comment on this. None of them did in their initial reporting of this. They all retold this story, hook, line, and sinker. Without a doubt, again, they're talking about this days after my reporting. Without a doubt, they saw my report that called into question the validity of what Crowder was saying. And that's when they decided to look into it. Megyn Kelly does not credit me. She does not source me. She doesn't even source the outlet that my work was published in. But, that's who they are. But let's continue.
The Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's organization, they did some work trying to confirm that as well. And the California Bureau of Prisons is denying it, saying we do have some pregnant women in our prisons, but they were pregnant when they got here. They were not impregnated by trans prisoners who'd been transferred from the men's prison.
Right. Now, if you don't trust the California Corrections Agency, I understand that. But you can also not turn around and trust the Women's Liberation Front. So basically, if you don't trust either, we don't have a story. Because there's one source for the story, and that's an anti-trans group. And we have one source that can debunk it or provide a debunking of their own, and that's the California Corrections Agency. So pick one or pick none. I mean, you can't say we can't trust the prison agency, the governmental agency, but we can trust the Women Liberation Front. I'm sorry. Find a more reputable source than either then, and then tell the story. Until you do that, you got no story here.
Wolf, this organization, is standing by its reporting, saying we're in contact with women in these prisons, and our information often comes out before yours does. So
the women that they spoke to in this prison probably are the same women that I found who the LA Times interviewed before this was enacted. This law was enacted, where basically they were regurgitating all this anti-trans propaganda in their interview with the LA Times, these prisoners, these women inmates. So I'm sure they were already fed this turf anti-trans bullshit beforehand. So the idea that there wouldn't be anti-trans bigots in women's prisons making this shit up is not surprising either.
I don't know what the truth is, but there certainly has been this reporting out there, and it is indisputable that the California prisons are allowing biological males in, thanks to a law pushed by Assemblyman Scott Wiener. And now there are...
Hold on a second. Have you guys... This is important. Do you know who Scott Wiener is?
Mm-mm.
I mean, it is indisputable that that's a thing. What is disputable is the entirety of Crowder's story, that the cause, that law, SB 132, I believe I said it was, and the effect is women being raped by their fellow inmates, transgender women. I mean, that's Crowder's story, the effect. I mean, yeah. Transgender women in California are not now allowed to stay in women's prisons while incarcerated. If that's your whole story, congratulations. That's correct. That's factual. But that's not your whole story. That's not even the point of your story.
Do you know what his most famous piece of legislation was before this? Non-disclosure laws if you have AIDS or HIV. I know some people right here in your show right now are listening like, I don't even have a chip for that. That sounds like a kind of law where you could infect someone with your viral load of HIV or AIDS without their knowledge. Yes, that's exactly what it is. They thought that requiring people who have HIV AIDS to disclose that they have HIV AIDS in sexual encounters with strangers would be stigmatizing to those who may have HIV AIDS and infect strangers. So Scott Wiener, he really made this his raison d'etre between leather chokers at the Folsom Street Fair. And I don't just say that as a broad generalization. To be clear, you can find the pictures. So this...
I mean, these are the same people who argue against telling your vaccination status, right? Are you kidding me? And we know what these laws, HIV AIDS laws are usually used for. They're used to target gay men. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's illegal to knowingly infect someone with AIDS or HIV, as it is, to be quite honest. I mean, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that is actually illegal. Without compelling someone, forcing someone to tell you their history of health.
guy really has his priorities straight. Well, people have to step over pools of human excrement like Frogger in the state of California right now, that he's decided this is his new law.
Really
But sorry,
nice.
continue.
Megyn
Just
Kelly's
as I
like-
love it when you use your French. He's from Canada. His mother's French Canadian. I love it when you use your French and it sounds legit. Okay, so the numbers are, let's see, I don't know, it's something like 300 people have identified themselves as trans so far. Let me see, 20 of the requests have been processed so far, but none have been denied.
Right, that's the thing too, right? I mentioned that stat earlier. She's wrong. It's 21, by the way. I got that from the corrections agency. So over 1,000, I think it's like 1,200, 1,300 trans women are incarcerated in the state of California. 300 of them have requested that they be moved to a facility that matches their gender identity. Only 21 of them. So you can't, it's not even like it's automatic. There's a board that looks into the request and approves it and denies it. Only 21 have been approved, meaning there are only 21 trans women who are currently in a women's prison in California.
Including those, according to the National Review, requested by male sex offenders. Now, I actually dug deep on that too. I clicked on the link in National Review. Where are they getting that? That, previously male sex offenders now say that they're trans and they want to go to the women's prisons. The National Review link takes you to a Santa Monica Observer article and a report directly from a female inmate named Amber S. Jackson, claiming that HIV positive trans female sex offenders are in prison now having sex with female inmates. She's posted repeatedly over there. I don't know whether this is the source. Look, none of this actually needs to be confirmed because we do have, and you posted this, several actual confirmed cases in the past of trans individuals hurting other people via.
Are you kidding me? This is a paid commentator on SiriusXM? Are you shitting me right now? Let's listen to what she said here just one more time.
Female inmates. She's posted repeatedly over there. I don't know whether this is the source. Look, none of this actually needs to be confirmed because we do have, and you posted this, several actual confirmed cases in the past of trans individuals hurting other people via
Yes.
sexual assault or rape. That
I'm honestly, I'm speechless right now. Are you kidding me? What level of journalism is this? What level of commentary is this? We're on a new playing field here. So let me get this straight. Let me give you a little example. So it's been a few stories recently about state level Trump campaign heads being convicted of being child predators. So we know that there are people connected to the Trump world who have sexually assaulted underage men or women. So by Megyn Kelly's logic, we can now claim that every fucking Republican is a child molester, right? Matt Gaetz is being arrested for sexual encounters, rape, and even worse, trafficking of underage women. By Megyn Kelly's logic, we know that story, so we could just extrapolate from it and decide that, every Republican congressman, maybe even every Republican, is a danger to underage women, possibly involved in trafficking. College-age men, many stories of college-age men getting young women drunk at universities, at frat parties, and raping them. All college-age men, rapists. Danger to society, lock them all up. We know it's happening, right? This is clown-level shit. This is clown level. I got to listen to this one more time. This is the most absurd bullshit I've ever heard. And this is from someone who's supposed to be like one of the intelligent conservatives, right? Or one of the non-extremist conservatives. One of the former like guiding voices of Fox News, not one of those crazies over there, right?
Posted this, several actual confirmed cases in the past of trans individuals.
I didn't go far enough. Let me.
Actually needs to be confirmed.
One more.
She's posted repeatedly over there. I don't know whether this is the source. Look, none of this actually needs to be confirmed because we do have, and you posted this, several actual confirmed cases in the past of trans individuals hurting other people via yes. sexual assault or rape. That it's not to say that all trans individuals do this, as you already pointed out. It's just to point out.
You're saying that. You are literally saying that. If you're saying you do not need to confirm specific cases to say transgender people are raping, then you are saying that your belief is that transgender people are just more predominantly raping people than anyone else is. I mean, that is what you are saying. Now, you can just talk about those specific cases. You can tell a legitimate, well-sourced story about a transgender person committing a sexual assault and saying that that transgender person did that thing. That would be a news story because guess what? That transgender person is an individual in the same way that a male rapist is an individual, the same way that a cis woman rapist is an individual. Does not tell something about their entire gender. Says something about that specific individual. That would be a legit story. But what you are saying is that you do not need to tell a legit story because all you need are these cherry-picked ones to tell you everything you need to know about transgender people as a whole. Is there any more to this bullshit?
That it is a problem, it has happened, and people are not completely off their rocker to be concerned about trans women being put in women's prisons.
Where's the concern for the men being raped in men's prisons? Where's the concern for women being raped by other women in women's prisons? Where is the concern for your Republican college frat groups raping women? More rapes happen at colleges and universities than there are transgender people raping people in general, period. There are more cis men raping women in colleges and universities than transgender people are raping, period. Where's the outrage there? Where's the big story about how all young men need to be watched out? They're dangers to society. All are going to commit rape. This is another fucking level here. This is absolutely ridiculous. Garbage bullshit. This is something SiriusXM should be receiving a mass letter campaign. A protest outside their office for letting this shit fly.